Shine Brighter, written by Sunshine. Chapter 2. Light My Fire. Saturday afternoon found Adagio standing in Trixie's mom's garage. In one corner, a guitar, amplifier with pedals, keyboard, lectern with blank sheet music, and set of headphones formed a nook around a folding chair. Near the door to the inside, there was a yellowed, off-white refrigerator, next to a counter covered in trays and various bottles, with a metal sink in the middle. On the opposite side of the room, a clear set of drawers full of craft supplies, next to a small desk with a sewing machine. Aside from the sedan taking up half of the room, this did indeed seem to be her workshop. "What is it you need me to do again? Something about passion and fire." Slinging the strap of her flying V over her shoulder, Trixie explained. "Trixie has been having a hard time finding the same passion as she had during the Battle of the Bands. I used to live for the competition, showing off how amazing my skills are." Trixie posed in a manner befitting someone who thought so highly of herself, and Adagio had to keep from rolling her eyes, opting for appearing attentive and patiently waiting. Trixie continued, slightly less enthused. "But ever since the rain boom stole the win, I haven't felt the same. I've been getting frustrated when I try to play, but I never feel like I'm doing my absolute best. It's like the star shining bright within me has faded, and the fire has gone out. If that makes any sense." Adagio tried not to react to that particular choice of words. When she had made blanket statements like that during her siren song, she was just trying to plant ideas and rile up the CHS student body. It seems that even beyond the magic she had used on the whole school, Trixie had internalized what Adagio had sung. Now that Adagio was powerless, Trixie was no longer feeling the drive to compete, but still wanted to prove she shined brighter than her opponents. They hadn't explicitly mind-controlled anyone besides the principal and vice principal. The siren song was merely a powerful suggestion, and the human's negativity and unfulfilled desires added fuel to the spell. And yet, this one girl had taken to heart that small push of the siren song, and was chasing that momentum. If Adagio had a drop of empathy in her body, she might feel bad for this lost young woman. As it was, she merely had to think of a way to pretend to fix a problem she'd caused. "I helped this girl get out of her own head and get her groove back. In return, I'll learn how she did that stunt the other day. Surely, if she's just in a rut, I can give some simple feedback and the problem will fix itself. This whole thing could be resolved in however much time it takes to learn this low-level magic of hers. Hopefully tonight, if I can break this unlucky streak." Adagio set down her purse and grabbed the cushioned stool near the sewing machine, sitting down to say, "All right, show me what we're working with." Trixie donned a cocky smirk and scoffed. "Prepare yourself, Adagio Dazzle, for the great and powerful Trixie." After some final adjustments of the electronic knobs on her guitar, Trixie's fingers danced across the fretboard and produced a freeform rhapsody of growling and screeching. Adagio felt as though she should be enthused about and amazed by Trixie's masterful guitar skills. And it was impressive. Still, she never really cared for instruments, when she and the others just had to sing to make music happen. But she did agree to help Trixie figure out why she wasn't as passionate as she was during the musical showcase. Like it or not, she had to sit through the electric noise to uphold her end of the bargain. As the last note rang out, Trixie struck a pose and held it, panting and trying to look confident. "So, what do you think?" Trixie huffed with a grin. Adagio stood up from her chair and walked towards Trixie, brushing her own fluffy hair behind her ear. "Do you want me to be honest, or do you want me to be gentle?" Trixie visibly shrunk as her smile faded into a concerned look, and her confidence evaporated from her voice. Honest, I guess." "You sound great, you really do, but—" Reaching out towards Trixie's forehead, Adagio casually wiped sweat off and showed her moist fingers as she continued. "But you're clearly putting in too much effort. Did you used to sweat buckets like this before?" Trixie was still caught off guard by the physical contact, being a repressed, uptight human and all. But she quickly gave a sheepish grin and averted her eyes as she answered. "Not usually. I guess I have been tryharding lately." Adagio rolled her eyes and walked around to stand behind Trixie, Let's start with your posture. Stand straight up, shoulders back, feet shoulder-width apart. She manually manipulated Trixie into a stance by running her hand along her back, grabbing her by her shoulders, and using her feet to nudge Trixie's. Adagio felt Trixie go rigid, but she paid her no mind as she continued. All that thrashing, headbanging, and silly stance work isn't going to help you play better. And I'm going to show you a better way to play without tiring yourself out or working up a sweat. Trixie turned her head to address the siren, who had been laying hands all over her. You know, when Trixie said she needed to find her passion, this wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Her blue cheeks were growing pink, and her shaky voice tried to sound playful. Adagio let out a small laugh, almost scoffing as she chided. You asked for my help, so you're getting it. Now shut up and play what you're playing from the top. Trixie put her fingers on the strings, putting out a low hum from the amp, but she hesitated to begin playing, silently swallowing and twitching her digits against the strings. Her purple eyes looked back at Adagio nervously. Well, prompted Adagio. Well, aren't you gonna... I'll guide you in a second. Just play. Adagio interrupted, trying to sound encouraging, which was not easy for her. With a stuttered, choppy exhale, Trixie was finally able to get her fingers moving, drawing out a few slow notes and replaying her solo piece. It was then that Adagio decided to intervene. Adagio placed her hands on Trixie's hips and began guiding them, making them rock back and forth. Trixie began to go along with the hypnotic swaying motion. Her melodic playing began to quicken and intensify, far more than when she was thrashing. Adagio's hands left her waist and traveled up to her armpits, guiding her into another swaying motion. Her shoulders and hips began to rock from side to side in an energetic wiggle, accentuated by a powerful arm-controlled strum on every other beat of the wiggling dance. Letting go of Trixie, Adagio stepped back and let the guitars follow the rhythmic swaying she had started. She could hear the notes getting better and less forceful than they were before, and the solo progressed in a far more graceful manner. It wasn't frantic noise grasping for attention, but rather a driven symphony of rhythm and power. Trixie even began to add her own steps to make the pendulous dance into an inspired performance. The inspired soloist hit a final power chord and used her arm to add vibrato to the piercing shriek. Adagio clapped and tried not to sound condescending as she stated, See? You are natural. You just had to stop flopping around like a hippogriff out of water. Sweat-free and elated, Trixie smiled as she turned around and innocently asked, What now? Adagio rolled her eyes and waved her hand. Don't worry about it. She stepped closer to Trixie, poking her finger against Trixie's chest to accentuate her next words. Play like that next time you're up against Rainbow Dash. You'll blow everyone away. Trixie looked down, and Adagio followed her gaze, realizing she had gotten close to the girl's breast. She let her awkward finger linger for a mere moment before sliding it down Trixie's chest, leaning in and smirking mischievously as she added, Not to mention, you're pretty good at moving those hips. Adagio watched the shiver go up Trixie's spine, her chest visibly pounding and her face reddening again. She broke into a sweat again, trying to stammer out a response, only to be stopped by the door into the house opening. Both girls' heads snapped to look, Trixie still glowing red, and Adagio slightly annoyed at the interruption. An older woman, with light-tanned skin and graying black hair, stuck her head in. I brought pizza. Oh. Trixie didn't try to move away from Adagio, as she tried to explain. Nana, hey, we were just... I'll just get the table ready. Smiling politely, Nana slowly leaned back inside and shut the door. Adagio's subtle grimace shifted back into a look of amusement as she scoffed. Geez, what a way to kill the mood. And here I was hoping we could make some magic. Trixie was aghast. Adagio! Adagio took a step back and smugly grinned as she clarified. What? I meant the magic you still need to teach me, you naughty little minx. Embarrassed, Trixie could only respond, Oh, right. The yellow girl let out a sinister chuckle, gently running a finger across the magician's cheek and cooing. It is so much fun to watch you get flustered, Trixie. Without another word, Adagio floated to the door with a hypnotic sachet in her strut. She was inside the house before Trixie could think to show her to the kitchen herself. Idly looking at some of the photos, she passed through the hall towards the kitchen. She saw a photo of a young boy who looked remarkably similar to Trixie. But she decided to just gather the answer through context clues. Peculiar as it was, Adagio had very little interest in actively pursuing that trivial, bemused observation.
And once the potassium nitrate has been properly mixed in, we take the black powder.
Trixie reached her gloved hand towards the black powder and removed the cap. She and Adagio were wearing clear lab goggles and disposable masks. She removed a small spoonful of black powder and gently tapped it, peppering it across the mixture. When the last of the powder left the measuring spoon, she handed it to Adagio, who copied the action on her own smoke bomb. Once Trixie saw Adagio had completed the step, she continued.
Then we take the edges and begin to fold.
The two women began folding as if making middle school paper footballs, Adagio mirroring each crease Trixie made. Before the last few folds, Trixie reached over to the box of firework snappers and grabbed two.
And before we do the last of the folds, we put one of these in, right here.
She placed the snapper in her bomb and finished folding, with Adagio not far behind. Picking up the tray with the two smoke bombs, Trixie walked over to the fridge and explained.
And then we'd leave these in the fridge for at least 4 hours to solidify.
Adagio took initiative and opened the door to the fridge, so Trixie could set the tray on the rack. After the door was closed, Trixie removed her gloves, mask, and goggles, proclaiming,
And presto! In a few hours you have functioning smoke bombs.
Adagio also took off her protective wear, revealing her engrossed and eager face.
And then I just throw it on the ground, and it will give a puff of smoke? And then what? How do I do the tricks you were doing? Is there a spell I have to think of? Or runes I have to inscribe?
Trixie smiled and whispered,
If you're fast enough and clever enough, you don't need any of that. We'll have to go over some of that another day, before we start practicing using the bombs.
The accomplished blue girl walked over to the sink, set down her goggles, threw away her mask and gloves, and began washing her hands.
But what about the thing with the stain and stealing the coffee? The bell on the coffee shop door didn't even jingle when you stole What's-Her-Face's coffee. How did you pull those off?
Trixie finished washing her hands and dried them off with paper towel before answering.
Mind over matter. If I put my mind to it, I can really make anything happen with a puff of smoke. Although sometimes it's not exactly what I was planning to do.
Trixie chuckled sheepishly as she recalled some of her unexpected results when using smoke bombs. Adagio didn't seem satisfied with that answer, as she furrowed her brow and wrinkled her nose as she pressed for more.
What do you mean? My outfit was so wet from the spill, and then you switched places with me, without touching me, I might add, and then my clothes were dry, as if it had never happened. That's not just mind over matter, that's teleportation. There's got to be a spell or some runes or a power or something that allows you to do that.
Trixie was taken aback by the severity of Adagio's disbelieving tone, but she managed to calmly suggest,
If we try it my way in the next lesson, will you just trust the process?
Next lesson?
Yeah, you'll have to come back to test your first smoke bomb after all. And it'll take you a while to get the hang of prestidigitation. So you're welcome to come back for another lesson anytime.
Okay, but what's the catch? Are you still not feeling it with the guitar stuff?
On the contrary, Trixie hasn't had this much fun in a long time. Plus, Trixie still has to teach you magic like she promised. So, however long it takes you to learn, you're welcome to come over.
Adagio was a little taken aback at how eagerly Trixie offered to keep giving her lessons, especially at no apparent gain of her own. If you say so. Pulling out her phone, Adagio saw the late hour and a bevy of missed calls and texts from Arya and Sonata. Sighing, It's late. I should probably be heading back. But I'll text you later about that next lesson offer, okay? Adagio approached Trixie's house, still wearing her work clothes, having come over right after her shift ended. Trixie had texted her, asking her to come over again, though she didn't specify what they would be doing. Adagio hoped they might take another shot at the smoke bombs. Maybe if she hung out with Trixie more, she'd get some hint at what Trixie's secret was. Although she was fairly certain it was bona fide magic, and Trixie was just in denial. She was still trying it her way. Fourth time's the charm.
Plus, It'd be a lie to say she hadn't come to somewhat enjoy Trixie's company. She was amusing, and the lessons had become a break from the tension she felt around her sisters. And the thrill of flirting with her, to see her illisms and composure melt before her eyes, was just an added perk. Adagio took a moment to make herself slightly more presentable, taking off her visor hat and putting it in her purse, followed by her hairnet. Taking it off was always such a hassle. After giving her great cascade of hair a quick fluff, Adagio knocked on the door. Trixie soon answered the door, Adagio noticing that she'd tied her hair back into twin ponytails. Cute. She was a little confused as Trixie brought her finger to her lips, hushing her. Mom's taking a nap on the couch, so we need to be a little quiet. Come on, she whispered, ushering Adagio inside. Trixie led her through the living room, into a short hallway, pointing towards the end. Bathroom is at the end of the hall, if you need to change out of your uniform. Even though she had a spare change of clothes in her purse, she'd rather take a moment to gather herself. Hours of standing behind a counter and about 30 minutes of walking to Trixie's place meant Adagio wanted to do nothing but sit down for a minute. Current apparel be damned. Following Trixie into her bedroom, Adagio was taken aback by the disorganization of it. Compared to her garage workshop, a barely made bed took up much of the room, along with a desk that housed a modest laptop, and a number of cards. Several playing card decks, and a bunch of cards labeled Sorcery the Conclave. A small TV and game station shared the top of Trixie's dresser, along with a few pill bottles. Trixie sat on her bed, so Adagio followed suit to sit on her right side. A small flag covered in pastel-colored lines caught Adagio's attention. What flag is that? She asked, pointing to it. Trixie seemed surprised by the question, rushing over to pick it up and shove it in a drawer before nonchalantly returning to her seat on the bed. Nothing, just a silly little thing I got from a friend. The reaction made Adagio raise her brow, but she didn't press her on it, instead turning to the other thing that caught her eye. A small picture of a well-dressed man on stage, taped to the wall. His skin and hair were nearly identical to Trixie's, but he was too old to be the boy in the other photo. Who's this? He looks like you. Oh, yeah, that's my dad. I don't think I've met him, or even seen him around, Adagio mused. Trixie looked a little pensive, rubbing the back of her neck. Yeah, neither has Trixie. He and Mom split up before I was born. I'm not even sure he knows I exist. She shook her head and found her usual enthusiasm. Which is why Trixie needs to be the best performer ever, so we can meet as equals. Adagio smiled, still looking at the picture, but was tinged with melancholy. My father was never around either. She cleared her throat and tried to navigate away from the subject. Opening up to some human girl about siren stuff was off the table. Sorry for bringing up something so personal. Trixie shook her head and cleared her throat, nervously fidgeting as she said, It's fine, Trixie kind of wanted to talk about something sort of serious too. That brought Adagio's attention back to Trixie. Inwardly, she wondered how serious Trixie could be while referring to herself in third person. But she gestured for her to go on anyway. I'm listening. Trixie took her time finding the right words, her hand finding its way to the back of her neck once again. I'm just wondering, what are we? Adagio blinked. Well, I think by now we could call each other friends, right? Right, friends, but friends don't usually touch each other like we do, or flirt around as much, or... Adagio shrugged indifferently as she checked her nails. That's just what I do with my friends. It's funny. Trixie looked at the ground, taking a quivering breath to steady herself. Okay, but it doesn't feel just like friendly joking. It feels, kinda intense sometimes. I'm not, complaining, but... Then what's the issue? Adagio casually asked. Well, do you like me? Like me? Adagio didn't seem to understand the question. I like spending time with you, yes? Is there a reason you said it twice? Or are you just stuttering? What Trixie means is... Trixie took another deep breath, hugging her fingers together as she forced the words out. Would you like to go out with her sometime? On a real date? Adagio smirked at her. Oh, I get you now. Slithering over to close the distance between them, Adagio used her sultry voice as she said,
If you were just going to ask me out, the bedroom was a bit forward of you, Trixie. Trixie tensed up, eyes growing wide as Adagio loomed over her. Shrinking, she looked more and more like prey, which made something click in Adagio. Deciding to play with her food a little, Adagio reached a finger up to touch Trixie's lips, shushing. Shh, don't worry. I won't tell Mama's showcase that you plan to seduce me. No, I wouldn't. I didn't. I mean, you're very pretty, but I wasn't going to. Not that I wouldn't want to. Shh. Adagio hushed again, chuckling quietly. Not too loud. Mama's still sleeping. Trixie bit her lip to stop herself from getting any louder. Don't look so scared of me, Trixie. I don't bite. She leaned over to Trixie's ear and whispered, Unless you want me to. Trixie gulped, closing her eyes tight. She could feel Trixie's shivers as her warm breath tickled her ear. It was clear to Adagio that she was overwhelmingly nervous, even as Trixie quivered with anticipation. With a smirk, Adagio cupped Trixie's jaw and gently turned her head towards her, letting out one final warm breath on Trixie's lips before meeting them with her own. Adagio felt Trixie lock up as she pressed her lips against hers, but after a few moments, she felt the tension start to fall, like a spring uncoiling. The timid and nerve-wracked Trixie relaxed, melting like putty into Adagio's embrace. She even returned the kiss with a subtle moan. Adagio also felt something peculiar within herself, like an egg cracking within her chest. It was something Adagio had never felt, so she didn't know the words to describe the feeling. When they pulled apart, Trixie was left panting and breathless. Wow, I honestly didn't expect this conversation to go this way. Adagio, herself, felt a little disoriented too, smirking back at Trixie as she brushed her hair behind her ear. Enjoying yourself? Trixie blushed and nodded sheepishly, but eagerly. Yeah, wow. Adagio chuckled with a smug grin. You act like you've never kissed a girl before. Not since before, when I was still, not since middle school. She seemed to hastily correct herself, laughing nervously, which Adagio took note of while she wondered why her chest started to feel tight. Trixie locked eyes with her, and soon she found the blue girl leaning in for another kiss. Returning the kiss with gusto, the feeling in her chest began to abate, so Adagio fell into some old habits as she reached up towards Trixie's head, running her fingers down her ponytails and through her straight white hair. Fingers found their way into Adagio's own thick, fluffy mane. So she reached over to Trixie's lap and, with a loud gasp, Trixie jolted, ripping away from the kiss. No, she exclaimed, pulling her skirt further down her legs and blocking Adagio's fingers. Adagio felt dizzy. Huh? What? Timidly, Trixie softly pleaded with her. Please, don't do that. I am, Blinking in confusion, Adagio innocently asked. Was that too fast? Yes, exactly. I'm, not comfortable with that yet. Okay, sorry. I'll try not to do that next time. It was a novel thing for Adagio to encounter a boundary during kissing, but it made her heart do odd palpitations. Trixie sighed and looked away suddenly. I'll tell you why eventually, just not now. Smiling sadly, Trixie reached over and placed her hand in Adagio's. Adagio looked at their clasped hands, unsure what to do, before glancing towards the door. Where did you want to go? For the date. Trixie seemed relieved by the subject change. The county fair's in a few days. We could go there. Adagio smiled and squeezed Trixie's hand. It's a date. Hello, it's me, Bunny. Now, as you can see, this is a little late. So obviously I've had some stuff going on. I'm not going to be doing a one-shot for this week. That's getting moved up to next week. Hopefully by the upcoming Tuesday, we'll be back on a more regular schedule. Bye!